Hey folks, Renita Young here, host of Your Money Story. And I was just hoping you could join me for a little snack today, that's all. The snack is popcorn. The conversation is going to be with Popcorn Finance podcast host Chris Browning. He's here today to tips that he has for us. Chris Browning is known for Popcorn Finance, and you're going to find out the premise behind it. He usually gives people financial advice in about the time it takes to pop a bag of popcorn. And we're going to test out that theory today on Your Money Story. So why don't I invite Chris in to chat with us? Hang on for a moment. Chris is almost here, folks. Hey, Chris.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
And
thanks for
I
having me.
thought I thought it was appropriate to bring a snack to the party.
You-
So
I was
thank
gonna say,
you so
I'd
much.
have some popcorn if it wasn't so early over here
Right,
on the West
right.
Coast.
Well, we thank you for getting up for us, coming live from Southern California. We really appreciate you being with us early today. And so let's talk about that. You're from SoCal. You
Mhm.
are a financial analyst as well. And you and I have the pleasure of having graduated college during the Great Recession, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
tell me though, before that, how did you grow up relating to money?
Money wasn't something that we talked about at home. It was more so like, hey, you do the kid stuff. You go to school, you worry
Hmm.
about that, you get into college, that's your focus. And so we never really talked about it. And, definitely my friends weren't talking about it and we weren't learning about it at school. So it was just something that it was kind of a mystery out there. Like I knew eventually, you get a job, you get some money, you're supposed to do some stuff with it. But I never learned any of that. Not until I got into college. That was my first exposure to the world of managing your money and personal finance and investing and all that good stuff.
So take me to the moment where the shift happened and you became more
Mm.
conscientious about your spending.
Mm. I would say that shift happened maybe like a few years after I got married. We found ourselves in about $27,000 worth of credit card debt, and it was paying for a wedding, paying for
Wow.
furniture and
Hmm.
emergency bills, all these things that popped up. And I finally took the time to sit down and add up everything that we had going on. And that's when I realized how bad the situation was. And we were probably only taking home around $45,000 at the time
Hmm.
in Southern California, which is not a lot of money at all.
Right.
So that's when the stress and anxiety set in when I realized how bad the
Hmm.
situation was. But that's when I knew we had to make a change and we had to do something different.
So you're coming up on 4 years of popping popcorn with the Popcorn Finance podcast. But what initially drove you to start it 4 years ago?
Hmm. Well, I when I went to school, I initially went in as an art major, had no plans at all to talk about money in any way whatsoever. But I found out I wasn't that passionate about it. Was taking a finance class just by chance because it fit into my schedule.
Okay.
And that's when I realized, oh, this stuff is really interesting. I know nothing about it. So I switched my major. There at the schools that just happened to have a financial planning like emphasis within the finance major. So my plan was to graduate, become a financial planner, and help people out. But like you said, graduated during the middle of the recession, couldn't find work. It was a
Hmm.
struggle. I was working at a bank already, so I just stayed at that bank for like another 2 years because I just couldn't find other work. And then just stumbled into the accounting field and doing analyst work. But I always still enjoy talking about personal finance and teaching something that so many people knew so little about. And so I was a big fan of podcasts. I live in California. All we do is drive, and I'm constantly listening to podcasts. So for me, it was like, well, why not give that a try? Maybe that's something I could do to still
Hmm.
teach, even though that my career path took a completely different turn than I thought I was going to out of college. Maybe this is my way to still teach and spread the information that I found so valuable.
Sounds pretty good. And I mean, I personally think that millennials are well suited to talk about this. I feel like we're the transition generation where not
Yeah.
only in technology, but when it comes to personal finance. And so even Bloomberg News has a report out now about the first millennials that are turning 40 years old and how they're not
Mm.
quite ready for retirement yet. And so it always fascinates me to learn a little bit more about millennials. But let's get a little bit more into, you have tips for us about
summertime spending and saving. And we're simply put, people are not trying to go broke this summer. And so what I know about you is that you say that, hey, listen, if you don't have to travel or you cannot travel, there are other things that you can do. So why don't you start off by telling us what you can do with low budget, no budget summertime fun?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think everyone has this pent up demand to get away from wherever they've been for the past
Mhm.
year. I've had friends who've been at the airport and they said it's crazy. Everyone's out there. So if you want to save a little bit of money, avoid the crowds, avoid the chaos, can't even find a rental car right now. There's a lot of things you can do in your area that one are much closer to you, probably a lot less stressful, and in some cases are free. One thing I discovered, this was right before the pandemic actually, because I gotten really big into going to my local libraries and getting ebooks and just visiting, having a quiet place to work.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize it, but they have many libraries have programs where you can actually get free passes to your local museums, local attractions, local gardens and things like that. And it's something that's gives you a chance to see something that you might not have even known was near you.
Mhm.
A lot of times
Yeah.
we avoid the things that are right by us because we're just going about our daily lives. But you can check out these great places, great locations in your city, in your local area, and
Mhm.
oftentimes for free. And you can get multiple passes in some cases. And so it's a great way to spend the afternoon, spend the weekend without having to pull out your wallet at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But for those who will be pulling out of their wallet, you have a specific strategy on how they can save to be able to do that comfortably so that they're not stretching. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of what they call sinking funds. I think there's a bunch of different names for them, but it's a way of putting aside money on a regular schedule, so that way you can then spend that money guilt free because you've been building it up over time. And so for me, what I like to do is I like to open up a whole separate savings account
Hmm.
specifically for what I want to do. So if it's for travel and I want to go somewhere, I'm going to open up an account. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to name it whatever that goal is, whatever I'm looking for. And then
That's
I can set
good.
up an automatic transfer. I say, okay, I want to take this trip in 6 months, in a year from now. And I go through and I say, all right, how many times am I going to get paid in between now and then? So if it's going to be 12 times, it's going to be 26 times, wherever that number is, I go then and I divide that number of what I think I'm going to need by the number of checks I'm going to be getting. And then that
Hmm.
lets me know I need to put this much aside every paycheck. And I just automate it. Just here, automatic transfer right out of my bank account. I don't even think about it. And
Yeah.
there's been times where I actually forgot, like, months in, I've already forgotten about this. And I go looking at my bank account, I'm like, oh, look at
Look at
that.
that. I
There's
hadn't
hundreds of
saved
dollars in
up.
there.
Totally. You know what? I discovered that a few years ago, and I call mine the fun fund. So
Exactly.
I love it. And I love the concept of just naming it whatever you want it to be. The same, I would presume, with your budget. If you
Mm,
want it to be like, this may or may not be mine, the generational wealth super plan or whatever I call it,
yeah.
then it should be that. So pretty cool. And so you also said that during the pandemic, and not only you have said this, but many people, we've accumulated a lot of stuff,
Yes. Yes.
specifically from online websites. What should people do with that stuff now? They may or may not find a use for it, but you have an idea for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people picked up hobbies that they never thought they would pick up over the past year. People are baking. Some people are have gardens. Some people took up new like physical activity. They picked up a new sport. Maybe they
Hmm.
got a bike. Maybe there's so many things that people have done over the past year because so many things were closed. And right now, you may find yourself saying, "I don't even care about this anymore. I thought I was going to love this. I thought I was going to be the next great baker and open up my own bakery." And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to see another piece of bread. If that's you and you have all this stuff that you've accumulated, just go. I like to just walk through my house. Like I got into this whole minimalist kick a couple years ago where I was like,
Hmm.
I need to get rid of some stuff. What don't I need? And so just
Okay.
walk through, like kind of take an inventory. You don't have to make it formal. You don't have to like take out a pad and write down everything that's in your house, but kind of walk through it
Right.
like, is there dust on this? Have I not touched this? Hasn't that moved from
Hmm.
this corner in months? And just think to yourself, am I realistically going to do something with this? And maybe you're like, I would like to do some things this summer, and maybe I didn't set up those savings accounts already. You can go through and start looking at these items that you've accumulated and say, look, what can I get rid of? What can I sell? Go through, and there's so many sites where you can sell like electronics. I love a site called Swappa. I've used that so many times.
Okay.
You can go to eBay. You can go to Facebook Marketplace and just
Right.
list these things up. You don't have to have professional photos. The
Right.
cameras on cell phones are so good these days. Just sit it
They
on a
are.
nice piece of carpet or sit it on your table and clear stuff off. Take a few pictures, write a short description, and put it up. And you'll be surprised at how quickly a lot of these things sell.
Okay, absolutely. And so you also talked about further down the line, you talked about how we should start looking, or we should really take a look at everything we've done in this year in our budgets and do a full budget reset. So how can I practically approach a full budget reset? Do I need to ask myself some questions? Walk me through it.
Yeah. So we're almost basically at the halfway point through 2021, which is crazy
Hmm.
to think that it's gone by this fast.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know where time has gone. And oftentimes we start looking at our money at the beginning of the year, January, New Year's resolutions. We're like, we're gonna do things differently in 2021. And sometimes we can be a little too ambitious, or maybe we're not ambitious enough when we're setting up our goals
Mhm.
or plans for the year. So now's a good
Very
time to
true.
say, look, it's been almost 6 months now.
Right.
Have I done what I said I was going to do when I was all enthusiastic at the
Hmm.
beginning of the year? I actually have a list of goals here on my desk, and I
Oh,
looked at it and I
good.
was like, some of these things I have not come anywhere near reaching these things,
Same,
right?
same.
And so just go back and reevaluate. So especially if you have any like financial goals, if you're like, you know what, I'm going to max out my IRA this year. I'm putting $6,000 in there, and now you look back and you put $200 in. Like, don't
Mm,
beat yourself up. We all do it. Obviously, we all set goals that we don't end up reaching. But go through and say, all right, look, is reaching $6,000 a real goal for me at the end of the year? And you're like, if you
hmm.
say yes, I can put in another $5,800 into this account over the next 6 months, then great. Figure out what, again, going back to my other recommendation of like when you're going through and setting up those sinking funds, go through and look, how many more times am I going to get paid this year? How much
Hmm.
will that need to be each paycheck to reach that goal? If you do that and you're like, okay, that is not a realistic number for me to take out of my account, I have other things I have to take care of,
Hmm.
then adjust your goal down. There's nothing wrong with saying, look, this is my dream. I'm not going to be able to make it, but that doesn't mean I can't still hit a new mark for myself, something that I'll still be proud of. So go ahead and adjust that goal down to be realistic. Don't stress yourself out for the next 6 months, but make it a realistic goal, a realistic number, and then just set up that automatic transfer and move towards towards the end of the year.
Absolutely. Very well said, Chris. And if you guys are just joining us, I am Renita Young, host of Your Money Story here on Quick Take, and we're talking with Chris Browning of the Popcorn Finance podcast. And that's why we're having a quick little snack on this here Friday. But why don't we take a few questions? I saw a few coming in a little bit earlier, and I'm just going to say, let's see. I'm going to, a lot of people are making comments. Uh,
I saw some good ones in there.
yeah, they are. So I'm scrolling back up to a few questions that people might have. Oh, you know what? I have one. I have one. So you've spoken before. You kind of alluded to it a little bit when you said, don't beat yourself up about it. There's a lot of shame attached to budgeting in general, and
Yes.
fear. Like, what would you say to the person who they're just budgeting for the first time? Maybe they're younger. Maybe they're older. Where do you start? Where do you suggest your folks start?
I would say the first thing is just know your first few budgets are going to be horrible and they're not going to work. Like when I first started to say, okay, I want to get things in order. I'm going to write down a budget. I'm going to plan. It was very ambitious,
Hmm.
and I did not hit those goals, those marks I set for myself for several months.
Fair.
And I think you just have to be okay with knowing, look, setting a budget isn't this like hard document that can never change. And once you sign it, it's locked in for life.
All right.
It's a living, breathing plan for how you want to spend your money. And just like life isn't going to be the same every single day, things will change. You have new priorities, you may have new expenses, you may get some new income. Things can change, and just be flexible knowing that it's okay to write a budget, make a plan at the beginning of the month, see that things are going differently than you planned, and then just tweak it. I think the thing is go in, change things up, be willing to make a new plan, and don't feel bad because now things are going differently. I think that's the biggest thing. Just give yourself flexibility. This is not a race. This is not
Right.
there's no punishment if you don't do what you said you're going to do.
Right.
Just go ahead and make a plan and just keep working it, keep tweaking it month after month, and then you'll get into a rhythm. You'll find a plan that works for you.
Okay. And last question. I really appreciate you giving us these tips because I think folks are really going to love the practicality of them, right? And the accessibility. And so you give sort of similar advice for looking at your budget for the next year and beginning to save for the holidays. beginning to save for that budget. Is there anything different that you might want to add to that, or is it pretty much the same advice? A sinking fund?
Yeah, I think so. It's the same thing. If you're thinking about what's happening later on this summer, you can extend that out and make even bigger plans for next year. So if you're like, hey, I'm not in a position to travel right now. There's some things I need to take care of. Maybe I had some interruptions in my income over the past year, and I feel the pressure from everyone else to travel because I'm seeing everyone on Instagram going places. But right now, I know that's not a good idea for me. It's okay to make plans for next summer. And that gives you a whole 12 months now to make plans to save. And maybe you could take a much better trip. Like if you try to force it now, you know,
Right.
you're probably going to maybe end up in debt. And you're probably not going to take that nice of a trip. Why not just say, all right, next year, I'm going to take a great trip because I have 12 months now to set aside money and go to the place I want to go and spend like I would like to spend, but without having all the stress of knowing I don't have the money.
And include in that the anticipated amount that you need for spending money. Want to make sure I
Exactly.
get that in there. Absolutely. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. You guys, if you want to learn more about Chris Browning and the Popcorn Finance Podcast, go ahead and click on Popcorn Finance Podcast. I'm Renita Young. This has been Your Money Story. I'm almost done with my bag of popcorn, so this was pretty good. But thank you for joining us, and you have a great day, Chris.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun talking with you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.